Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, heard an interesting interview that I want to share with you. It's a gentleman by the name of Zuby. I guess he's a rapper. He's got a podcast, and he talks a lot about Bitcoin, of course. But he brought up some interesting points that he wanted to share with the world, of course, regarding a central bank digital currency that I think all people should hear and something that we should consider. So go ahead and listen to the interview a little bit and then react to what he has to say. Before we get started, though, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, now is the time. Go to our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code PIMPY, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. There has been many a times where I've spoken to people about gold and silver. As much as I love Money Metals Exchange, they are a retailer and they got overhead costs in the whole 9 yards. And I always tell people the first place to go to is your local gold and silver dealer. You can find somebody, most towns have them, definitely cities have them, because you're more likely to get a better deal there than you are at any retailer. So if I come across a deal that I think everybody could benefit from, I definitely want to share the news with you. This here is Washington Street Jeweler. They're located in Sonora, California. You can see this is their business card right there. They deal in more than gold and silver. They have antiques, diamonds, watches, you name it, they have it there. A huge variety. Antique jewelry box, antique dressers, crystals. It's definitely better than your average knickknack store. They have a ton of things in there, so they don't just deal in just gold and silver. But at the moment, Eric over there at Washington Street Jewelry is trying to offload some of their gold and silver at the moment to make way for some other purchases that they're currently interested in making. So because of that, they're giving some sweet deals on gold and silver. And so I thought I would pass this information on to you. This will give you an opportunity to pick up some gold and silver at a very competitive price. They have rounds, they have bars, they have American Eagles, but they also have collectible coins. They have some very rare Russian gold coins as well. You know, I suggest you give them a call. They are in California time. They open at 10 o'clock in the morning. Reach out to them, ask for Eric, and just say, hey, I'm interested in picking up some gold or some silver from you. What do you have? You'll be really happy with the type of deal he'll be able to give you guys, especially on those collectible coins. They have some quarter-ounce Britannicas that I think are really good. This will give you an opportunity to take advantage of some pretty sweet deals. So give him a call. Ask for Eric. Just tell him Pimpy sent you, and he'll work something out with you, okay? So recently over in Vegas, they have this Freedom Fest. This person is making a case for why people should think about Bitcoin. Now, I've already expressed my concerns about cryptocurrencies, but I will say this. If a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum should go 100% gold back, with 100% transparency to where audits are held maybe once every other year, that validates that they absolutely positively have the precious metals to support the value of the cryptocurrency, I would support that 100%. That would be the best case scenario. That would gain a lot of confidence really quick and become an actual strong currency and help us to avoid the central bank digital currency. For the most part, in theory. But you got to understand that we're up against corrupt governments around the world, and they're going to touch bases on it just a little bit. So let's hear what they have to say and comment as we go along.
Thank you so much for joining us. It would be great to have you.
Hello, happy to be here.
Well, it's great to be here at Freedom Fest with you, Zuby. Now, I want to start off our conversation with something that is arguably antithetical to the whole idea of freedom, and that is a central bank digital currency, or a Cbdc. You've been quite vocal about government overreach, and many would argue that a Cbdc is going to lead to exactly that. And we're seeing a trend that they're gaining traction in terms of the number of countries looking at adopting them.
I'm not so sure that these people are willing to adopt them. We have seen some very strange things happen to world leaders who didn't exactly agree to follow up with this agenda. But you can see right here, there's 105 countries representing over 95% of the global GDP are exploring a CBDC. They're not exploring. trust me, this thing has already been thought of, planned out, created, all the kinks worked out, the whole 9 yards. Anytime there is disruptive technology, we know for a fact that the government's already been through it and found ways to manipulate it. So cryptocurrencies were that disruptive technology. They just refined it and now call it a CBDC. This is in May of 2020, only 35 countries were considering a CBDC. A new high of 50 countries are in an advanced phase of exploration, development, pilot, and launch. There are 3 countries, I think, now who've launched their CBDCs. And when the Caribbeans did theirs, they had a 2-week blackout. Something happened, so the launch was not good. People are not accepting this as much as they were hoping for. But that isn't to keep them from forcing you into this. More and more people are getting educated about the central bank digital currency. More and more people are getting educated about the World Economic Forum and their Great Reset agenda. So that makes me feel good that people are waking up to this. We just got to make sure that we stay on top of it and make sure it doesn't happen. That's the hard part.
In fact, 105 countries are actively exploring a CBDC. Now, that is a massive surge from 2 years ago when only 35 countries were looking into the idea. And 50 countries are actually in an advanced exploration phase of CBDCs, and that's the latest data from the Atlantic Council's.
If you're in one of those countries, you and the fellow citizens have to get up and say something. Because once one country adopts and then the next and then the next, it gets harder and harder for the rest of the world to fight this. So you have to stand up. You have to do something about it now. You can't just roll over and take it and say, what can we do?
CBDC tracker. Now, as we said, CBDC, central bank digital currency, still tied to fiat, of course. But before we get into the philosophical issues here and the ideological issues here, why don't we start off with you helping our viewers understand what exactly a CBDC is?
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
So although I will appreciate Zuby's description of what a central bank digital currency is, I thought it's best that we heard directly from the Bank of International Settlement, which is the central bank to the central banks. These are the people running the show. You heard what he said. The central bank digital currency is a currency that will be 100% controlled by the central bank. They will set the policies and procedures on how it is that we can use their money.
Well, central bank digital currency is, sort of says what it is on the title. It's a digital only currency that is issued by a central bank and which is controlled by that entity. So the real danger about this is that rather than really being a form of money, it could be viewed, I think, more like a token or a voucher that could potentially only be used by people who they want it to be used by and only for purchases that they want it to be used by. So if you think with a typical currency, if you have $1, you have £1, you have €1, you can exchange that with anyone who is willing to accept it for any product or service. It could be legal, it could be illegal, it could be anything, but you have complete control over that. But with a CBDC, there is the potential that they could limit it to certain types of purchases. Or perhaps if you behave in a way that they don't want you to, they could perhaps even stop that token from working for that particular individual or group. So in terms of what it is, I think on a basic level, it seems like it's a normal currency, but the difference is in the programmability. Because when it can be programmed, that means that it can be more controlled by those entities and it cannot be exchanged as freely and used as freely as another form of currency.
Right, and of course it's also just a digital version of fiat currency, where central banks still have all of the levers of control that they would typically have, just as you mentioned, on a digital level, even more so. Now, I know you've been a very vocal critic of social credit systems. China, one of the first countries to come out with a central bank digital currency. They're currently in their second phase of the launch. Iran is actually planning on launching one in August, and perhaps it's no coincidence that it's regimes that have, let's say, a less than favorable record of human rights that are coming first and foremost with this. But going back to the idea of social credit, how do you see CBDCs and social credit systems enabling each other?
Well, I touched on that. So, for example, if you had a social credit score, as they do in China, then what's considered misbehavior on your part, or non-politically correct behavior, it could be speaking out against the government, it could be crossing a road where you're not supposed to, that type of minor infraction, it could be hanging out with the wrong person, it could be paying your taxes too late. Whatever it is, what this would potentially enable is for them to punish you financially and limit your financial freedom based on whether or not they consider you are going along with whatever they want you to go along with. So in the current system, of course, people can be fined. There can be asset seizures and things like that for when people don't pay up on taxes and that sort of thing. But in this case, it would mean that you have a currency and you can't go and spend it in a shop, or you're not allowed to use it to buy a plane ticket, or you can't use it to buy a train ticket, or so on. So there's no limit to how a potentially authoritarian or even tyrannical government could control and limit and monitor your behavior based on that. They'd also have a complete record of all of your purchases. That's another part that we haven't spoken about. So this is very dangerous technology when these two things combine. We're moving to a stage, I think we've been doing this for the past few decades, where as the world becomes more developed and as countries become more developed, we kind of reach various forks in the road where we can allow technology to be used to free us or to enslave us. And with these technologies that we are discussing, I think these are technologies that can be used to enslave people. This can be communism 2.0 or communism 3.0.
Oh no, Zuby's absolutely right, he is. I've told this story before. I was listening to a man who had invented a ton of different things. He was speaking to a group of potential young inventors. And one of the kids asked him, how do you know what projects to move forward with and which ones not to waste your time on? It was a great question. He said, you ask yourself 3 questions. The first question is what I'm making going to benefit everybody? The second question is, will everybody have access to what it is I created? And the third thing was, can the government take it over and use it as a weapon against the people? If you answered yes to all 3 of these questions, don't invent it. Now I get what the guy was saying. Look, we want things that benefit everybody. The very last question was, can the government take over it and use it as a weapon against the people? Then don't invent it. Zuby's making a good point. Over the last 100 years, we have advanced big time in technology. And for the most part, that technology has freed a lot of people. But we're now in this weird fork in the road in which the technology also could be used to enslave the people. And there are a group of people out there who know that as well. And that's exactly what their intentions are. So we have to be very careful as a people. You can't just believe what they're telling us. They will paint it in the picture of, oh, this is good for the climate. Oh, this is good for equality. Oh, this will end racism. This will take care of the payment gender gap. They'll say all the key words. Zuby's going to bring that up as well, and I agree with him 100%. They will use all the keywords necessary to make you feel excited about it, but that's not what the intentions are. You have to be very careful about wolves in sheep's clothing.
Where it's not how it was in the 1900s, but actually that technology, rather than liberating people, as it has to some degree in the past, it actually enslaves people. I thought about this a lot over the past 2.5 years when you think about the concepts such as lockdowns. This whole pandemic response would not have been possible 20 years ago. It couldn't have happened, and no one ever makes that point. It was the technology that made it possible. 20 years ago, you couldn't tell people just do Zoom meetings, work from home, children can do remote learning. What the heck is remote learning? What the heck are Zoom meetings? What's work from home? That wasn't even possible as recently as 20 years ago. And in many parts of the world, it wasn't possible. It wasn't an option. And that's part of why many places didn't have this severity of the lockdowns and the stay-at-home orders. So I think as we advance in society, I think this about many things. I think this even with AI and robotics and things like that, we need to be very careful that we do not become slaves to our own technologies.
Well, you raised an interesting point about not being able to buy train tickets or plane tickets. That's already part of the Chinese social credit punishment. If you misbehave, for example, if you sneeze on the train and you don't cover your mouth or you don't wear a mask, you can be banned from taking the train. But one of the concerns that we're hearing about is how this idea of climate change and carbon emissions and a digital currency could all interlink. So for example, we've tracked that you've bought 20 plane tickets this year. Zuby, you've exceeded your carbon offset limit for the year, and therefore you're banned from buying future plane tickets, or you'll have to buy them with a premium. That's another one of the big concerns here. And again, you mentioned privacy, and of course, the central bank will be able to see every single transaction that you make. So complete lack of privacy there.
So that's just it. Look, the government, at any opportunity to find a new way to tax you, they will. And this allows government to grow. They'll create new departments claiming that it's for your own good. And it's just redundancy. The government is really terrible at redundancy. But understand that's on purpose. This gives them an excuse to grow the government. And the bigger the government becomes, then the harder it is to manage. I said this before and I'll say it again. The Constitution is very, very specific about our representatives. It says we're to meet with them at the very minimum once a month. Once a month. And it says in there in clear words, it says we meet with them to instruct them on what we want done. It says those words. It says we meet with our representatives so that the people can instruct our representatives on what it is that we want them to do. Somewhere along the lines, we have lost that power. We need to take it back. There's no doubt about it.
And the concern is, of course, that this is a move to eliminate cash from the system, so you wouldn't even have that as an alternative. So we're here in the US. How afraid should we be of FedCoin? We know that the Fed has been looking at it. They've released a paper. They're actually currently having it open for the public to submit comments and thoughts. Vice Chair Brennan said that it's essential to maintain the dollar's supremacy and role in the international monetary system.
The central bank digital currency is not there to help the dollar maintain its supremacy as a reserve dollar. Let's be realistic. That's just a BS excuse to put fear into people. If they truly, absolutely wanted the US dollar to maintain its supremacy, then they would back it by gold all over again. And the reason why they don't go back to the gold standard, because it limits the powers of the government. Because the government can only spend as much money as they have of gold, restricting how they spend their money. So they can't just spend it all willy-nilly. They can't funnel it like they do through these special organization groups, and the rich get rich and the poor get poor. They can't do any of those things. So the criminality involved in the country that is using the gold standard is very limited to one like we do now that has a fiat dollar that's backed by nothing but a promise from our government. Do you trust anything that our government does? When it comes to finances and money, they are only profitable at one thing: are meant. Selling gold and silver coins is the only thing that they do that is profitable. I'm not even kidding. You can look it up.
Jay Powell saying that it'll be something that Congress needs to take a look at. Should FedCoin happen?
No. No. People don't want this. Nobody asked for any of this. And one of the biggest realizations of the past 2.5 years I've had, and some people may not like me saying this, but this notion that we, live in truly democratic systems and countries or truly liberal countries it's a facade. It's a facade. I mean, the mask completely came off, pardon the pun, over the past 2.5 years. And I think people need to take the power back. I think that the power ultimately always lies with the general population. It always lies with the individuals. And all of these moves and notions with CBDCs and social credit scores, I'm not seeing people out there advocating for this. I'm not seeing people anywhere on the political spectrum saying, yeah, this is what we want. We want central bank digital currencies. We want this, we want that. And it's all being forced down from the top, often by people who are not even elected. There's nothing democratic about it in the slightest.
So how do people take the power back?
She asked a good question. So how do the people take the power back? Right now, we see over the last couple of years that the people from the left are allowed to protest, burn down cities, kill people, dox them, have people show up at your house, vandalism, and literally get away with murder because nobody will press charges against them. Where the people on the right are being thrown in jail, their constitutional rights being violated, being labeled an insurrectionist, being smeared, they're subject to cancel culture. So when do we get to a point where we say, you know what, enough is enough? We tried being the nice guys, but we can no longer do that. So when do the people fight back and say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore?
Bitcoin. And resist. Honestly, people need to learn that they're allowed to say no. You can say no.
Violent resistance?
No, I would recommend civil disobedience, peaceful protest, and just saying no, just not going along with things and not using things that you don't want to use and you don't want to support. When it comes to currencies, I mean, you really have to some degree a choice, especially with the rise of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular. People have an option with where they want to put their trust, where they want to put their energy, because that's really what money is. It's energy.
Zuby is right in this area. If somebody can create a currency that people can trust, that currency will become really strong. That's why I keep thinking, man, I wish somebody like Bitcoin and Ethereum would start, or any other cryptos. We know they're out there. There are some cryptocurrencies that are backed by gold, but they need more of them to happen. After we saw what happened in the crash, it really did shake the confidence in the people. Because what did we find out? A lot of these cryptocurrencies, they supported their currency by buying Bitcoin. What? Why would you do that? Because if Bitcoin collapses, then what? We saw all the other cryptos collapse as well. We saw a 78% loss in value. The smart thing would be to be supported by gold and silver with 100% transparency. 100%. An audit ran once every 2 years, maybe every 3 years, where we can see that the amount of physical gold and silver that the company is holding does support the value of the cryptocurrency. If you could do that with these cryptocurrencies, then it would be supported worldwide, it would be trusted, and it would be used.
And of course, it's a medium of exchange, but just like with any other technology, the market really decides what technology wins. The currency that rises in value and which becomes more powerful and becomes more widely adopted is the one that people choose to use.
Well, you still have the idea of government overreach into Bitcoin, for example, with regulations coming. Some have already been established. How do you see Bitcoin fitting in with the CBDC? Do you see that pushing more the move towards Bitcoin?
I think that they are, to me, these things are polar opposites.
Yeah.
I think one of them is designed to liberate and one of them is designed to enslave. And, a government or a central bank is never going to come out and say, hey, we're trying to enslave you, or we're trying to have more control and power over you. They're never going to say that. They're going to say, this is for your own good. This is for your health. This is for your safety. This is for your security. As you said earlier, they'll try to tie it to environmentalism and diversity and equity and inclusion. They'll somehow manage to throw all their buzzwords into it to make it sound good and to make it appeal to a certain type of person. But I think this is a dangerous system and a dangerous technology. And honestly, I think people should just say no to it.
Well, let's talk about Bitcoin, because that is something that you've said yes to.
Yes.
In fact, you're wearing Bitcoin socks, as you showed me earlier. We'll get a close-up of those. Is Bitcoin becoming more and more part of the centralized traditional financial system?
Oh, she asked a great question. It started off with total peer-to-peer, total anonymity, no regulations, no taxes, nobody in your business. And now all of a sudden it's become mainstream, adopted by banks and institutions that we were supposed to be freeing ourselves from. So that's one of the problems they have with cryptocurrencies, because once they get to the stage where you have derivatives and EFTs and the whole 9 yards, then it is subject to manipulation, like other investments, stocks, gold, silver, copper, nickel. Cryptocurrencies are now experiencing that. What you do is you want the bankers totally out of it. You don't want EFTs. You don't want derivatives. The fact that I hear these so-called crypto enthusiasts embracing that, those people aren't real, you guys. I would not be supporting any YouTuber that's out there encouraging you to love a cryptocurrency that is part of this new world order agenda at all. Don't support them. Get rid of their investments into them. They're not going to the moon. They're traders. And that's the honest to God truth. You want a cryptocurrency that will buck the system. They need to get gold, precious metals, get something to support them, other assets to support the value of the cryptocurrency. That's exactly what you need.
I've been wanting institutional adoption because that would get the price of Bitcoin up. There's been a push for Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin spot ETFs, all of these derivative products structured around Bitcoin. Is it in danger of becoming part of the traditional financial system, which is centralized, and therefore, in a way, violating its core principle of being decentralized as we move towards bigger institutional adoption?
I think it's a reasonable and it's a very reasonable question and potential concern. I think that Bitcoin is resilient enough to handle that. I think that part of the point of it, if you have liberty, if you have freedom, then that doesn't even mean that the government is necessarily excluded, right? Institutions, just like the average individual can buy Bitcoin, governments also have the ability to buy Bitcoin. Large businesses, small businesses have the ability to buy Bitcoin. I don't know if that, I think there's different ways to look at it. I think that could be looked at as a potential threat or a means of further centralization. I think it could also be looked at as a sign of positive adoption as to, hey, okay, rather than trying to crush this technology, this is even being adopted by the legacy system to some degree, just as it is by all the young and more innovative people.
Does it open it up to more manipulation then?
Yes, it does. He's going to make this case that everything is manipulated. That doesn't mean it's acceptable, nor should you accept that. That was supposed to be the great thing that made crypto stand out more than anything else. No regulations, no taxes, peer-to-peer, total anonymity. You don't want that. The last thing you definitely wanted was the same evil bankers that everybody cussed about and cursed about and was the core reason for cryptocurrencies to be created, to all of a sudden embrace them. Don't embrace it. You want them out of it totally. I think cryptocurrency creators should sit down with their company people and say, look, we're going to limit the amount of cryptos held by these companies, period. I know you want them to be holding billions and billions of dollars worth, but then it makes you a subject to manipulation, and that's not what you want. I know you want mass adoption, I get it. But let the people be the mass adopters, not these big, powerful entities that can steal your money just by manipulating the value.
Probably. The truth is every market is open to manipulation. I think the Bitcoin market and the cryptocurrency market as a whole, for many, many years, probably from its inception, has been subject to manipulation, even if it's just by people who are considered whales, who hold a large amount of the currency. So whether that's private individuals or it's public entities, that's always a concern, but it's also a concern with the stock market. It's a potential concern with real estate. I think it's a concern with anything.
But when we look at the opening line of the original Bitcoin white paper, and that says a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Do you think that Bitcoin has deviated a bit from its original purpose?
Yes, I said that was going to happen. I told everybody, man, when it comes to disruptive technology, the government already has their hands in it. People tell me, no, Pimpy, you're wrong, man. It doesn't match the wording that was in the white papers. Cryptocurrencies are way far away from what the original purpose was for. But instead, they embrace the same people that they called evil. They embrace the same institutions that they were supposed to be fighting against. Now they're all bed buddies, and that's why I'm not a fan of cryptocurrencies. Whatever currency that is created that is supported by literally gold and silver and other precious metals or assets, and we have 100% transparency and auditing is being done, that's supposed to happen now, but our own government doesn't even allow us to audit our own gold. What's that tell you? You know, these people are doing whatever the hell they want, and they have been for a long time. Our government has gotten way out of control. And it's time to start pulling that back. Again, it says in the Constitution that our representatives are to meet with us at the very minimum once a month so that we can give them instructions on what we want them to do. We have to get back to that. So we don't want the central bank digital currency. We want them to stay out of cryptocurrencies. They're going to keep telling us that we need it regulated to protect you from all the bad people that are out there. That's not their job to do it. You see, what happened is there's so many varieties of cryptocurrencies. If all of a sudden you're finding out that people are hacking and stealing Bitcoin and coming through Bitcoin or doing whatever with Bitcoin, then you sell your Bitcoin. Get rid of it. Even if you lost it, don't ever invest in them again. And this is when it starts becoming a capitalist market. You see, people are not going to be buying a product that they don't feel confident in. So if you could build that cryptocurrency out there that you could somehow, some way manage to keep it from getting hacked, manage to keep it from being manipulated, show the whole world that it's being supported by actual assets, full 100% transparency, and an ecosystem that is not regulated and not controlled or manipulated or have any part of a government involved with it, then you would be the currency that the world would adopt quickly. Anyways, that's it for now. Let me know what you guys think. I will catch you later. I'm out.